All right, y'all. Tonight we're going over Genesis chapter 42. And last week, like I said earlier, we went over this a little bit, kind of touched on it because it was bringing out the revelations just about our heart posture and making sure that we are being very introspective of how we are approaching the throne of grace. And so now we're getting to the part where Joseph's brothers are going to Egypt. All right. Verse 1. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at each other?" He continued, "I have learned that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us that we may live and not die." Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from, hey, babies, go down,
Sorry, y'all.
go down there for us and buy some so we may live and not die. But Jacob did not send Benjamin for Joseph's brother and the others, for he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to buy grain, for there was famine in all the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was governor of the land and the person who sold grain to all the people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him and their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. So I want to pause here because um, it said that, he knew them, but they didn't know him. And so he treated them like they were strangers. He didn't know them. So I broke down the word to know and strange. So, and when I was reading it, looking at it in the Hebrew, it said that he made himself strange to them, but he knew them. It was the same word, but one is just like to know and to act like you don't know. And so both of these words are showing that you either recognize or you don't recognize. You're either acknowledging or you don't acknowledge. You either respect or you don't respect. You either discern or regard or you don't discern or regard. That's the difference between making you know someone and making you strange to them. And so it brought me to the idea of just like the Messiah said in Matthew 7, he said, "I will profess to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity." And so this understanding of knowing Yah, knowing his salvation is not just to say, "Oh, I know you because I've seen you before or I've experienced you before." It's more of a, do you recognize, respect, discern me? Or do you just, am I just like a passerby in your life? And so I put on here, I was like, Joseph's brothers were estranged from him. And the text continues to show us that Joseph knew his brothers and understood his brothers, but they could not perceive because, in this sense, they were basically blinded because he's no longer just their brother in a sense, that they couldn't perceive that that was Joseph. And so I really wanted to pay attention to the word know or knew very closely because just like in this situation that we covered last week, we in the rest of the world have to go to the Messiah to receive our bread of life, our water, just as the world had to go to Joseph. I really want us to see the importance of knowing Yahuwah because in the lack of knowing, in our unwillingness to learn, in our unwillingness to love him and do his ways, we put ourselves in a position to hear, "Depart from me, I never knew you." And these words are also roughly spoken to people who are strangers. And so the being roughly spoken to and being a stranger are in the same context. And just as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about how Yahusha later on, he was telling them, when you have an ought with your brother, you go to them privately one on one. If they don't hear you, then you bring them before a witness or two, and then you try to talk to them again. If they don't hear you, then you take it to the congregation. So after you do all that, then you treat them like a stranger, like a Gentile, in the sense of just. So I want us to really understand like this concept of being spoken to like a stranger or roughly. It's like it's not something just happens immediately. Time has passed in the situation where Yahushua is talking about how to deal with your brother or your sister, right? Talk to them by yourself. You talk to them with a witness. I talk to them amongst the whole congregation. He's like, at that point, then you treat them like somebody you don't know. They're a stranger at this point because they're not hearing your words. They're not hearing the order of how things should be handled or things should be done. And at this point, they have decided to be rebellious and not hear what you have to say. And if you're going to be a rebellious person, that puts you in the category of being a stranger. And so for understanding it, again, everything that we read about is practical, right? And so I was looking at Joseph's brothers in relation to Joseph, and then us being like Joseph's brothers, and Yahusha being Joseph in this situation is, do we recognize Yahusha? Do we know him the way that the Father is calling us to know and perceive? Anybody else have any thoughts, insights, commentary? Okay. They didn't recognize him. They didn't recognize him. And then at this point is when he remembered his dream about them. And then he said, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." "No, my lord," they answered. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies." "No," he said to them. "You have come to see whether our land is unprotected." But they replied, "Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man, who live in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." Joseph said to them, "As I have just told you, you are spies. And now this is how you will be tested." So I want to pause there. Okay. I got a little excited on this part because I was like, "Ooh, I was seeing all these different connections." Okay, so when he said you are spies, right? And so in Civilization, when spies came out, their whole goal was to scout and to look so they could see what they were going to steal or plunder, so that they could live themselves and thrive. So if the famine is everywhere, right, and you're thinking someone's a spy, what could be there for but only resources, right? And so again, back to I'm going to be going back and forth from Genesis to John and Matthew, okay? Because it's so many parallels here. Where John in chapter 10, verse 1, he says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entered not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber." So Joseph is literally telling them, y'all some thieves, y'all some robbers, y'all out here trying to see what we got so y'all can take it. And that's why I just thought, again, because I'm like, we've already established that Joseph is literally showing us a picture of what salvation looks like, and you have to come to him in order to get it. You can't can't try to go around some other way or try to be slick about it. But then he said, "I'm gonna test you and see if you lying or not," because obviously we know Joseph knows who they are. But again, he is testing them because to see if they're going to be obedient, if they're gonna if they really have changed, because they're saying, "Oh, our brother's gone. We're honest." They're saying we're not spies, that we're honest men. But Joseph knows that they haven't been honest men, right? But he hasn't seen them in 13 years. But again, how does he know if they have changed? If they're just coming because they need food? Or is it something deeper here? Has the time that they spent knowing that they've sinned, has it caused them to sit with that remorse, that guilt, that repentance? Has there been any change of heart in these 13 years that he's been estranged from them? It says, "This is how you will be tested or proved. Surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." Then he goes on to say, like, "Whether there be any truth in you, do this and you will live." And he tells them, "I fear Elohim." So he's telling them, like, I'm a man of my word. I fear Yah. But I need to see if there's any truth in you, because he knows, like, y'all been deceitful before. That was part of your personality. It's part of your character trait. You were a deceitful person. You want me to believe that you're an honest man. So, and to prove or to test is to examine the heart, to test for quality, right? So we know that Yah proves and tries us. And again, I said 1 John chapter 2, verse 4. He said, "He that saith, I know him, and keep not my commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him." And so we know earlier in chapter 41, Pharaoh told all the people, "You got to go to Joseph and do whatever he tell you to do. If you want this food, if you want this grain, you need to be obedient to the commands that come out of this man's mouth. If you want some food, you'll do exactly what he tells you." And so it's not just, what's the word I'm looking for? This unconditional love type thing. It's like, no, there are some prerequisites on here for you to get what you want, what you need to live. It's not just, oh, you just came and we just gave you the food. It was, no, let me ask you some questions. Let me inspect you. Um, are you, what's the word on here? Quality. Are you really, do you really, I need proof that you are really here for this food, unless you're just using this, you want food as a way to scope out the land so you can steal it later. Like, what are your true intentions? Um, and again, we see the word prove again in Exodus, like, because, Yah's character doesn't change. He says, behold, I will rain down bread from heaven, and all the people will go out and gather a certain rate each day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my laws or no. And so Joseph, he puts the same kind of, it's the same kind of character in the sense. He's like, okay, well, I need to prove you if you are really, if everything that just coming out your mouth is true. Bring back that young boy that you said that you had a younger brother, he's dead, but you have another younger brother. All right, I need some proof. Comments, commentary, insights.
I just wanted to step back to verse 1 when this started, and Yaakov was like, he made that statement to his sons, like, what y'all just looking, what y'all, I heard good for nothings, like I heard like this whole thing, like it in that one verse. I in that one verse, I see that this dynamic of who the brothers were, right? And what they had done to Joseph, that like Jacob knew. Like Jacob, he knew in such a way that it even made him say, now y'all gone down that road, but you're not taking Benjamin. You gotta stay with me. And I'm just thinking about that because especially with Joseph and Benjamin being born from Rachel, that like he was protective and that he knew. And the thing about that sits kind of as a sits as kind of a something in those verses is, to know that you have sons that have the capacity to hurt their brother, and to know that no, this time I'm going to step in because I can't have anything happening to this one. So I thought that just those couple of verses, those was an interesting exchange, because it says so much about how Jacob saw his sons, and the state that they were currently in, right? Even by their inaction, as the family was in a space of dire and possible death. Like, it says so much about what that dynamic of the family kind of looked like then. I thought that was so interesting that that Jacob make that kind of distinction.
I was thinking something similar, not I mean definitely about the protectiveness, but out of 10, 10 men, like the leadership, the person to step up, I'm just thinking that they gotta all have giftings in some area, but daddy had to tell them go, go do whatever. But at this point, they should have their own houses and stuff established. So nobody's trying to come up with a master plan to feed their own wife, their own children, So it feels like for them to be men or of age, they're still all acting like kids. Like if 13 years have gone by because they haven't um, atoned, they haven't, necessarily come to, they hadn't discussed it, they packed it away, they like, trying to pretend like it stunted their maturity because like, 10 grown men and now you're going somewhere and leadership wise and then even the like Joseph didn't take from them. He gave them back some food for the journey, back from like that didn't puzzle anybody. Like I mean, he accused them of being spies, but he set them up to safe travel. Here's enough to eat. Here's enough for help. Make sure they got a little coin in their pocket too, in case anything happens. To get them back to make the journey back. But 10 grown men couldn't come up with a plan. So um, maybe Jacob was like, seeing something, but it just had to work out. Like that's what y'all told he got to take his hands off of it, and they just got to deal with that situation. But nobody's asking questions. So it's like you see all your kids sitting together, and then they still arguing and fussing, and nobody takes a stand, and nobody wants to lead, and nobody wants to. But 10 men, 10 men. who couldn't figure it out.
That's I'm glad you brought that out, Sister Rachel and Taryn, because we know that Joseph is 30, but he was the youngest out of all his brothers. So like when it's a grown men, like literally grown men, and I'm looking at this verse again where it says, why do you just keep looking at each other? And so Miss Rachel really brought out that like culturally he's looking at them like, y'all is too big for this. Like I'm worried about me in my house and my youngest son, but y'all have, like you said, y'all have your own families. Like, what is really going on here? And again, we don't have the full story, right? We can look at some backstories, some extra biblical text or whatever, but we know a little bit about Judah, what he was going through in all of this. We know about what happened with Reuben a little bit. We kind of covered that. I'm talking about what we covered in Bible study, right? And if you took it upon yourself to read some of the other testaments, you see what may have been going on in some of the other brothers' lives. But when it came to responsibility of like who would be the one who's supposed to be next in line to take over Israel's house, Jacob's house, right? We know like from reading scripture that it's Judah. Like Judah ends up being like he's supposed to be the one where the kingship lands. And we're gonna see a little bit of that when he speaks up. But it is very interesting, and which is why later on, like as we continue to read, we're seeing that like, has there been a change? Has there been a change in their character?
Oh, sis. Can I jump in real quick on that?
Yeah, go ahead, sis.
Because you, on that note, when you say has there been a change, and I'm looking at this from a perspective where there's nothing new under the sun, right? And how today we still have an example of men and women that are completely dependent on their own works, their own ways, and not trusting in the Most High. The example was Joseph because of his faithfulness. Now, his brothers can stand him. They can stand his dreams. They can stand his joy. They can stand his pride. They can stand his favoritism with their father. And I'm sure, Jacob has something to do with that, because, there's a way to show love to your children and let them all know that they're all loved equally or whatnot. But, I guess Joseph was by Rachel. So that's a big deal, number one. But with that being said, he had a lot of favor over his life. And even as he was sold down into Egypt and he left, he always trusted the Most High with all the temptation and everything that went on with that. Now you compare that to someone this day, they broke. You know what I mean? They sold off to their family. I mean, we still can't get over the fact of what happened with us in slavery. You know what I mean? Like we still fighting, we still arguing, we still mad at everything. And I say we as in general, but I'm free. I live in Goshen, okay? I've been out of that bondage for a long time. But what I'm saying is that if Yah has not taken over your thought process in your life, you have not submitted unto him and made him first, it's always going to be a threat with something else and someone. You know what I mean? And so for his brothers, they didn't really prosper. They couldn't figure out how to do, what to do, when to do, how to stop fighting, how to stop selling, how to stop hurting, how to stop drinking, how to stop sexting. They couldn't stop any of that because they didn't make the Most High their primary king. Let me say that, right? And when you don't, you find generation after generation after generation, we continue to repeat the same thing and we don't grow. And then we're upset and we're moved by everything. But at the end of the day, Yah is still saying that I'm your king, I'm your first love, and you will return back to me. And you can be in Egypt all day long, but you can live in Goshen and I will provide everything for you. And until we return to that as a people, we're going to always suffer. It's always going to feel like some type of transgression. It's always going to feel like, and I'll tell you, us in general, I'm talking about all of us. This is what happens when we don't put the Most High first in our lives. As his children, out of his DNA that comes from him, that was formed by him, we're going to continue to suffer as long as we don't put him first in everything. And so I just look at that example with his brothers and Joseph still having that peace of mind in the midst of everything and being able to love. Like when you've been through something and you're still able to love despite how you've been treated, despite how you were brought up, despite all the persecution you've gone through, and you're still able to give and like you may understand where it came from, but other people don't. It's because of the Most High. But again, it goes back to wanting to be more like him, understanding that we're not better, we're not separated. But if Yeshua went through it, how dare we question anything until we walk in those shoes, and we should be trying to. So I just, when I'm listening to this story here, it's just, that's what stands out for me, because I'm comparing it to this day. I hear all kind of complaints and everything else, even with everything that's going on with the government, people all bent out of shape. I'm like, why? Like, who's your king? So anyway, that's, just wanted to put that in there. Baby girl sleeping, so I got me a little note up in there. I can, get up in there a little bit. But anyway, hallelujah, praise Yah.
Praise God. No,
But
that's good.
also too, it's an example of like how we know that unforgiveness sits heavy with you. Like the secret keeping, right? Not only did they know like the little bro code or whatnot, but Reuben being tormented right now. First thing he said is, "I know we reaping. Like I know it's coming back to get us." So because whatever happened there was supposed to stay there, and then now they all, um, even whoever pushed for it, they all have some kind of they don't like the fact that they're in it with those people that did that. I can't think of the right word I'm trying to say, but you know what I'm saying. Like they don't like their brother for just as much of the part they had to deal with it, and for them, the others who had to deal with it. So all the arguing, but it just seemed like they're so childlike, like that maturity piece for everything where Joseph came from all the people that did him wrong, from his brothers and everybody. He's still sitting in a place of like, immediately he could have handled that situation a whole nother way, right? But they're bitter and the excuse makers. I think you said, that I totally see that, Aisha, like people who I'm like, did they do it to you? Or did you hear that they did it to somebody else and you just want to make that your excuse? But what can you do to make the change, or what can you do to be different? Or skip over all that and just talk to y'all about it, right? And being like, is that really the problem you think you have?
That goes right into the note where I said, Joseph's brothers are met with guilt and the iniquity they held for years. It is in this moment of meeting their salvation, because they don't know that it's Joseph, right? But they're literally face to face with their salvation, right? In this moment of meeting their salvation face to face, that they now have to face their sins head on, admitting their guilt, expressing their remorse, and understanding that the sins that they have committed, in fact, deserve death. Even like Reuben, he literally says, like, we must give an account for his blood. Like there's an understanding finally, right? Maybe all those years they never thought about it. They never really expressed it or talked about it amongst themselves. And maybe like this secret they did, just say, hey, we did it here. We're not going to talk about it ever again, right? And now they're forced to face it head on. And I said, this is parallel to our own acknowledgement and realization of our errors and our sins we are faced with, and we're faced with much sorrow. And in the mirror of this situation, our salvation is already there. Knowing the things of our hearts, observing to see if those things in our hearts, observing to see if we can see those things in our own hearts, and are we willing to hand them over and be obedient to the Savior's call and requiring us to move forward to obtain this bread of life. And so again, y'all talked about Joseph's compassion. Like in his compassion, just like Yah's compassion for us, his love for us, the grace is shown why he extended the offering of life to us, but making it very clear that in order for us to receive the eternity of the life in Yah, we must come back to him, giving over, relinquishing, sacrificing the things that we hold precious in our hearts' lives, because he has much greater. So that's why I say I really love that we started in Genesis, because we can see the full picture of Yah's plan for salvation with us. Just as Joseph's brothers, this is a part of our surrender process that is like one of the hardest parts, because you have to be open and honest with yourself to say, okay, what I did, this deserves blood. What I did, I can see how my life has went array after I made these decisions. What I participated in has opened the doors to X, Y, and Z many things. In the midst of us saying these things, we can feel so much sorrow and depression sometimes, right? But to not forget that Yahusha is literally standing in the midst of your confession. He's standing in the midst of your repentance and your acknowledgement of the things that you did in rebellion, because it wasn't just like a sin that they did that they know it wasn't wrong. This was a premeditated sin that these brothers committed. Yahusha's like, even in your premeditated sins, when you repent those things and you're honest, the things that you did in your heart and the wickedness and the guilt and the envy that you were harboring when you did this deed, I already know about it. I'm just trying to see, do you understand? Do you realize and recognize these sins, these wrongdoings that you have committed? That is part of the proving process. Yes, sis, that's where the proving comes in. Because if you can't see your own errors, that means the proving that y'all trying to do in your heart, you're just bypassing it.
Oh, I wanted to add something on that, Miss Samir. So I read something this week that I've been meditating on, and it was this concept. It was part of a prayer, and one of the things it said was that basically help our hearts to know that it is not the egregiousness only of the sin, but it is the egregiousness to whom we are sinning against. Because a lot of people can feel, and myself included, we can feel the shame of the thing we did, but it's not even about the thing that we did or said or whatever, or behavior or whatever. It is about the fact that we have done this against who, right? That we have caused the Most High to be saddened or hurt or disappointed. Like when you take a look at the places where we fall short from that perspective, you don't get so caught up in the behavior, because it's not about the behavior. The behavior will show up anywhere. If it doesn't show up in your speech, it'll show up in your deeds. If it don't show up in your deeds, it'll show up in your thoughts. Like, it'll keep moving around if you make it about the thing. But if you make it about, oh, like you said, who is it that I have? Who is it that I have offended? Who is it that has been so good to me, so gracious to me, protective of me, keeping me, and yet I have done this thing? It changes the weight of making you adverse to doing that, because like there's some things in our lives that we may let go like easily, because it's like that surface thing. But there are other things that it's like, I will never go back to that, because I know that it made the Most High feel like this, and I'm not gonna make him feel like that ever again. So I think that being able to see that perception of not just so focused, like the sister was saying, like Sister she was saying before, not so focused on the outcome of that thing, but who is the participants? What is the central theme? What is the central point here? Which is, no, this is because you had this impact on the Most High, and this is how it's now affecting your relationship.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that thing about, because Yah has feelings. The Most High, He has feelings. And so on verse 24, in 23 said they did not realize Joseph could understand them since he was using an interpreter. And it says Joseph turned away from them and began to weep. And so I wanted to bring out this weeping, right? Because I put weeping for those who need saving, weeping for the saved, and the weeping of the Savior. And so there's so many levels to our weeping, right? So, and I put on here John 11:35, where it says Yahusha wept. And you know that in this moment, it wasn't like he was crying because Lazarus was dead. He was weeping at their lack of awareness. He was weeping at their lack of understanding the authority and the power and the joy and the hope that is in him. And it was just like they could only still see, kind of like Joseph's brothers, like they didn't perceive that it was Joseph. They didn't perceive him. Just as when Yahusha was walking amongst his family and his relatives, they could not perceive who he was. And so they were still crying and mourning, not realizing that their salvation was in their midst. And that made Yahusha weep. Our Father, he weeps when we don't recognize that he has joy, love, restoration, promise for us. Even when we claim to say that we know him and that he's for us, it's like even in our lack of believing things that he wants to do in our life, that makes him weep. right? So we're talking about so many different spectrums right now, but yes, he weeps even when we're in our sin and our transgressions and what we've done to ourselves and other people. But even in the midst of us being healed, to know that he weeps with us as we are saying, Father, I want your healing. And so it's so layered. And so I'll put a lot of scriptures on here where Jeremiah 8:18, where Jeremiah, they call him the weeping prophet, but which is kind of like redundant because as a prophet, this is me going to tangent. As a prophet, the whole setup of being a mouthpiece for Yah is that you feel what Yah feels, the anger, the sadness, the joy. Like even when he's delivering the sad words, the harsh words, you feel it all. So if Yah is weeping, the prophets are going to weep. And so it's just like, if your prophets aren't crying because of the sins that's going on, I don't know what to tell you, because they, like, Jeremiah was weeping because Yah was weeping. Like his heart was broken to see that, like, Jerusalem is like, Israel is a mess, and I'm crying because you don't want to return back to Yah. This breaks my heart, right? We just see it all over the place.
But I was gonna say some of them prophets was cutthroat, so Jonah didn't want to go. He's like, I know you're gonna give them an opportunity to say they sorry, and but he wanted them to get that punishment. And then I think I was reading because I had a couple questions that I was gonna ask you too, like out of Micah, I think. But some of them was like, oh, if the woman gets caught cheating, just cut the baby out of stomach. Like they was like, okay, but you're the prophet. You're not. I mean, they was like cutthroat. So Jeremiah being real sensitive, like, please, please, please. I understood that analogy a little bit different after I was reading some of the other prophets, because some of them really did just lay the law down and was like, well, that's just kind of
I think
what
it
it
was
is.
like, with Jeremiah, I think it was a both and, because there's so many situations where Jeremiah was just like, kill them all because I'm tired,
Yeah,
right? But then he
yeah.
was just like, okay. But like, when I think it really just mirrors like
That's a lot.
God's heart, because a lot of times y'all just like, when they cry to me, I ain't gonna hear them because they didn't want to hear me. Let them cry to them false gods. I'm not gonna hear you when you cry in the day of your calamity because you didn't want to hear me. And so I think as the prophet, because Yah has so much control and power over his heart emotions, we're just these little vessels trying to contain and relay what Yah has allowed us to feel, and it comes out sometimes all over the place. I'm just like, he's angry, he's sad, he's joyous because we prophesy, we see like the remnant. There's some people gonna get it and we have joy for that, but we also see the people that's not gonna get it and we're sad. Then we see the people who are just spitting in Yah's face, and it makes us indignant and angry. And so there's so many, again, just a human vessel, just the meat suit. And it's like this meat suit is receiving the revelation and the word that Yah wants to give to the people. And there's all of these layers of Yah's heart and emotion that's intertwined within the word that he's giving you. And so maybe Jeremiah, just was able to express more of the sorrow, but he also expressed the anger, and he's just like, I'm fed up with y'all. You also have the prophets who are just like, I've cried already about this in my room by myself, but when y'all see me, when I get to your face, I'm about the action because I cried enough already. I'm already sorry. Y'all told me to come here and tell y'all it's over for you, because he's fed up. And so saying all this because like it's just so like Yah is so compassionate. He has so much love, right? And so when we're seeing different prophets being able to express and be tangible to the emotions that Yah is conveying, sometimes we get stuck on, like, we're not saying us, but we've been people sometimes to be like, oh, Yah was angry. See how that prophet talked? Like, that's just one layer of the emotion. If you piss me off and you ask me to talk to you, you're gonna get angry. Like, but if you're being devotional and you're being loving towards me, you get it's just like any relationship. Go ahead, sis. I see Desiree here, and I see Sister Rachel, I believe.
I was just wanted to say that Yah, through his prophets, I would call it, with all his different emotions, it's still all love at the end of the day, because we are his children. And just like with my son, even though sometimes he could do something that really upsets me, I still love him at the end of the day. And y'all's love, if anything, has always been consistent, even with Moshe. And we see the anger when he just wanted to, start all over. He was done with the whole lot of Israel. And so it's just so consistent, and that he just keeps trying and trying and trying. And you do have to do that with your children and still love them, you know. And so as a parent, I feel like I understand y'all on that kind of level, but it still can be so hard because you still have to let your children grow, and you can show them and tell them what the right things to do are, but at the end of the day they still have to choose that for themselves. And you want so hard to, you know make sure they making the right decisions, but they still have to make those decisions on their own. Like, I'm not going to be able to stand in front of y'all for Ashton, you know? And so I just wanted to comment that.
That's good, Desi. Yeah. That's all I was trying to say, right? I'm not a parent, but like that's why I was like, it's so layered because yeah, just parent relationship is like the perfect example of that. Someone said if you want a crash course, I saw a quote like, if you want a crash course in theology, just wait till you become a parent, then you'll understand. Yeah.
But you know what else I was thinking is that even though it was a famine in the land, they come from a generation that kind of knows how to, like, you're going to go ask for help or go get something, but they had no offering. They had nothing to kind of come. So again, I'm like, 10 people, y'all just show up. So, I mean, people don't know. You didn't have a pre-planned speech to say, hey, here's the background. You only start spilling the beans when you got questions, but you didn't prepare to really go in to get the help. I mean, Israel, like all of them, every time they sent somebody out, they were like, hey, this is what we have, or it might not be much, or this is the best of the little bit that we have. But they really did just show up. And, again, I'm thinking of just like how that can be with the generation we're in right now. You know, whether technology has ruined some things or not, but just some of the entitlement. They're like, you don't understand, and it's like, but what you going through though? Like, you love, you have a support system, you have all these things, but yet you're still seeing it a particular way, like you've been wrong. Like, and then on top of it, if Joseph was the one who wronged them, now he been going and out the picture. So now what's your excuse? Like, what are you still carrying on with? But they walked into a situation not offering anything.
Go ahead, Sister Rachel.
And like along this same line that we're talking about, like feelings and emotions and all of these things, I think for me, one of the things that, especially now, um, even as long as I've walked with the Most High, the understanding of, a redeemer, a savior who is touched with my infirmities. Like he feels the things that I feel, that to know that when I say to the Most High, I am sad because my mother passed and she's not with me, that he's not a distant deity, right? That's off somewhere stoic, unmoved, unfazed, because a lot of people struggle with the presence of the Most High, not the necessarily the demonstrative, way in which the culture, like where I come from, where, when the presence shows up and all kinds of stuff happen, right? But I'm talking about just the manifested knowing that the Most High is with you and what that means to be able to sit in spaces that He is with you, that He can be with you in the depths of grief. He can be with you in the depths of the sin of your shame, right? While you're having shame about sin, rather, that He is all that He's ever present. And when I think about it, when like the Most High get heated, like He be getting hot. There's somewhere, y'all know I don't know the book, y'all got to go find it. Where he was like, hey, don't be serving these idols because they can't touch you, they can't hear, they can't see. And from that, I pulled that, you know what? The Most High is like, I'm invested in you. I'm not just invested in you because I am your creator. I'm invested in you because I care about you. And yes, I can run the gamut of what those feelings may be because we run the gamut with what those feelings can be. We have people that we love dearly and truly, but we get disappointed. We can get angry. We can get, we can have an attitude, but at the base of it, it's not changing the fact that it's all coming from a place because we love them and we want the best for them. And I think that it's important that we continue to understand that being made in his image means that, hey, if I can be hurt because somebody does something wrong to me or something that I feel like I didn't deserve, then the same is also true in a application way towards the Most High. He can also be disappointed in the fact that we are not choosing life, that we are not choosing the things that he is setting before us, and that because of that, that we can have impact on him. Not in a way that like our impact might be where we just fall out and all the things. It's not impactful that way, but that each and every last one of us has the capacity to do that. And I think about that. I think about that a lot sometimes. I think about how Most High, I may have a handful of people that I feel like really like wounded my little heart. I said, and here we are talking about millions of souls every day. Every day, I was like, oh, your capacity, his capacity and the depth of the love that he must have and is to be able to shoulder that. Because I'm like, my little five, I be like trying to get over and doing the forgiveness. And I'm like, you talking about millions of souls? Millions that just be like, whatever. We don't want you and we don't think you exist. And while you're breathing his air, it's like, I be like, oh, the intensity of that, and then not to act on it, right? That's a whole nother level. The intensity of knowing how we can be how we can be harmful to the Most High, and yet he not act on it immediately. Just like when we're reading with Joseph get a little rough with him, and then he talk a little stuff, and he's working out this little strategy of getting Benjamin and all that stuff. But at the same time, he didn't act immediately and just be like, you know what, and just like go off. I think about the breath and the capacity of the Most High to be able to hold that, because I know I couldn't do it. Like like uh, yeah, that's all I want to.
No, when you were speaking, I'm glad you said all this because even though we're talking about Joseph's brothers and Joseph himself and how Joseph is a picture of Yahusha, but when I was reading this and you triggered it when you were talking about how this is an example for us. If we're supposed to walk like, move like Yahusha, the people who hurt us are coming to us, right? They're coming to us, they're talking. Maybe they don't recognize you in this season that you're in because you've changed. You're a new creature now. So they don't recognize you. You're not the same person anymore. But to see that there's still levels and stages of our healing and our surrender, even in Joseph, right? Joseph is in this high position. He's moving in authority. But yet when he's met with the people that have wounded him deeply, yeah, he spoke a little rough to him, but he didn't do nothing crazy. He still stepped aside, grieved what was going on. The grief of just like, dang, I love them, but they hurt me. And it's like a myriad of emotions. And then he stepped away to mourn. And I think it's for us to understand that you cannot try to rush over your grief. Because when you try to bypass your grief, you don't heal. You don't heal properly. You heal in a fragmented way to where that bitterness, that anger is still in there, but you're saying that I forgave them. No, you didn't. Because you didn't allow your heart to feel it. So this is something that that Yah's really been pressing on me to speak about, because it's like Yah in Joel chapter 2, one of the banner scriptures that I live my life on is Yah saying, rend your heart and not your garments. When our heart is being rent, when our heart is being torn, that literally implies a grieving. It implies mourning. It implies feeling pain and sorrow and all of the myriad emotions that are embedded within allowing your heart to break. So Joseph is allowing his heart to break again. He ain't been met with this in 13 years and it's all flooding back. A lot of times we try to rush over things that happened to us 13 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, all because we say, I got the blood, I'm saved. But you didn't allow him to really know your heart. We talked about earlier, the word know, we've got to really meditate on that, because if we're wanting our salvation, our good Father to know us, it implies allowing him to be in the midst of the heartbreak in the ripping. Like y'all were all saying, learning to experience Yahuwah, not just in this grandiose, oh, the Holy Spirit is here, you're getting slain in the spirit, you're laying out, people crying, tears, all in church. That can be very fake sometimes, because the real testament of his spirit being in you and him dwelling with you is allowing him to sit with you in the pain, in the sorrow, in your bitterness, in your hatred, in your, oh, woe is me. It's allowing him in those spaces. And most people have not really rent their heart to the Father, because it's hard. It's painful. It's about going back to the trauma. Joseph had to go back to his trauma in that day. While he's sitting in a place of authority, passing out food to all the nations, he still got to deal with the trauma that happened to him 13 years ago. And he did not rush over it. He stepped aside, he wept. And we're going to see that he did it again. Every time it comes up. Just because y'all gave you a seat of authority don't mean that you totally healed and purified and you done dealt with all your sins and your pain and your traumas. That, a lot of times, I'm going to say this and I'm going to move on. A lot of times when y'all is elevating us, right? Not saying all of us, but the majority of people who get these elevated positions, a lot of times it's by man and it's not by y'all. First and foremost, people sit in these seats and they think because they're sitting in a certain seat that they're done doing a certain type of work within their hearts. So Joseph would have been like, I'm second in the nation. I'm the ruler of the kingdom. Like, I'm good. I'm done. Like, I got the power. I got the authority. No, you can't have this grain. Da, 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 da. And yeah, is he right? He had the right to do it. But like, again, you had the right to do it, but was it righteous? And so, again, getting to that heart posture, that true submission, like y'all were saying. What's his erasure? Elevation does not nullify the work of refinement. Yes, that's a whole quote. Because truly, but if we allow, that's why there's a proverb that said something about when a man basically saying, like, when a man is like elevated or he's put in a position, that's the true test of, like, a true man is tested in success, or when he's praised. Like, that's true fire refinement, to see like how you really gonna act once you've been elevated. Because according to Proverbs, or maybe it's a Psalms, but it's literally saying like the true test of a man is when he's being praised, is when he's elevated, because that's really gonna show your heart. So yeah, that's good, Sister Rachel. We're gonna have to put that in the notes. I'm about to highlight that right now.
One last comment on that is, I wonder if the way they go back to whining to their dad about how Joseph treated them harshly, but even though he used an interpreter or something, that maybe they're just still, it's something familiar about it, and that's why they're sensitive. Because how do you know the temperament of other countries, other areas? You use an interpreter going to go beg for food. Why wouldn't, I mean, other languages sometimes can sound harsh and abrasive, just for you not to understand that. But immediately the first thing they said is, he dealt harshly with us. I mean, I just still go back to grown men whining and crying. Like, did you really take it all the way personal? Or just thinking about, like Sister Rachel was saying last week, the context of that culture and all the languages, and, and they're doing business. Like, if that's the only place that can be able to feed and provide, comfort or something to all the other nations around there, then why would you take it so personal like that? Like, just, you think about the movies and somebody next, and they come in the door, they plead their case, and then they go on to the next person. But they really standing in front of their dad, like, oh, he pleaded with us harshly. So maybe in a different way, they felt that connection, but still couldn't pinpoint it. From I'm just me wondering.
I think they felt like that or they acted that way because they did feel guilty. At the end of the day, they knew without anybody even having to say anything. I mean, that's anybody. If you do something to somebody and then when it turns around back on you, then you want to try to put it back off. And so I think that's exactly what they were doing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Oh.
go ahead.
Oh yeah, because I mean, for y'all to say that, and hi, hey everybody, but for you guys to say that, I mean, it literally says it. I know I missed last week, so I don't know if we're past 44. I don't know exactly where we are, but I'm like, it literally says that it's like Elohim has found out the iniquity of thy servants, and it's like they knew they was in the wrong. Okay, so you guys are still in 42. So I'm my bad. I'll be reading while I'm at work. So I just like I said, I'm trying to read front to back. Okay. So I'll just be trying to read as much as I can. And it literally says that Elohim has found out the iniquity of thy servants. And it literally said that. And it's like, man, like they knew they were in the wrong. They're like, man, why are you treating us like this? Like, why are you talking to us like this? And everything is because, yeah, that guilt, even if it, whether or not they knew if it was Joseph or not, it was back there, it was in there, and it was time to repent, for it to come to the surface.
Hallelujah. That's it, right? All right there, because we were talking about earlier before we got on about how like Yahusha already knows the iniquity in our hearts, right? And it's us that has to be met with it. And so we kind of said everything that you said, sis, even though we're not in 44 yet, but we're kind of, we know the story for the most part. The majority of us are walking through this again and just seeing it with new eyes. So we have kind of alluded to like the full matter of the thing too. So you're good. But I also want to put on here, so we see in verse 25 that Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and he put the silver back in their sacks and gave them provisions for their journey. And so I put on here that they were being tested on multiple levels. It wasn't just their heart posture, because we have to look at it. Remember, when they did this to Joseph, it wasn't just about the envy and the jealousy and the hatred. They also sold him for gain. So there's a concept of like being hungry or greedy for money as well. And so I put on here that like, we see that Joseph's brothers, we can see that Joseph's brothers are not only being tested and proved based on their repentance and remorse, but also on their change of character and ways. They sold him in anger with no compassion, in envy, while also feeding their gain for money. They were opportunistic by wrongdoings and deceit. And so in this testing, we see that Joseph has already seen that their heart posture and their repentance is true, or he's still weighing the matter. He's still looking like, okay, I hear them talking about they know they're wrong. I hear them talking about they know that there's blood on their hands. But now I need to see if their change of character, I'm going to give them back the money and I'm going to give them food to see if they're actually honest men. Not only to him, but to themselves and to their father. All of this is going to be proved within themselves during this journey. This time, are they going to return? Because, hey, I got the money and I got my food. I got my money back and my food. Like, whoa, if you're really an honest man, there should be a change that happens here. This time, are you going to return with the money and keep your word by bringing your youngest brother? And so, and I put in here, it's not just enough for us to cry, repent, right? And be remorseful if there's no character change in how we move forward after receiving the grace extended to us, right? Because they received grace. Because if Joseph was really trying to be rough with them, he could have just locked all of them up and be like, nope, it's over with. Like, you're not going back home. But he was still graceful to them, but he gave them the food and he returned them back with their money. So again, just like our Savior, like a lot of times, we say that we're sorry and we're remorseful, and Yah extends this grace to us, and he's waiting to see, or he's proving to see, are you going to come back to me? Are you going to come back here to receive the full extent of what I have for you? And so, but if we don't return back, then we just take our little extended grace and our prosperity and our money or whatever the things that he gives us when he's extending the grace to us. If we don't come back, it's the equivalent of like spitting in his face. Thus proving that the tears and the woes of our verbal declarations was all done vainly. So yeah. And then we get to the part where they end up getting back to their father and they tell him, like you said, he was crying like, oh, he was being mean to us. We told him we weren't spies. And then as they're emptying their sacks, verse 35, there's a pouch of silver, and their father saw the money pouches and they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children, because we know Simeon is still there. Like the whole thing was, I'm gonna let you go back, but this brother gonna have to stay here. Because I need to have some kind of reassurance that you actually gonna do what you say you're gonna do. And if you don't, this is the sacrifice that you're making. And as I was reading this, it made me think about my own like walk with Yah, and how when I first said yes to truly like being obedient, like, you know, I've been a Christian, a believer my whole life, but when 2020 hit and I decided like, no, I'm gonna like keep your ways the way you said it, not based off religion, but based off your word. And in the midst of me doing that, I remember like, you know, I've always been a writer and I've always been a singer and a songwriter and a poet. I remember Yah told me to put down my gift, and I felt like it felt like in this situation from the brothers, leaving Simeon would be like leaving my gift in the like leaving my gift in the dungeon while I go back to make a journey, to make a decision if I'm going to come back to the Father and do everything he told me to do. And then when I did it, I gained everything that I thought I was giving up or I had to leave with him because of what I did in my perversion of the thing that he gave me. And so that was the way how the Father like showed it in my picture when I was reading this, having to leave Simeon and then go back to their father's house to be obedient to the word, to bring back, to be obedient to the command to bring back the other son. And then at the end of it, we know that everybody's free and it's even more and more abundantly than what you thought. That was kind of how he helped me kind of like equate it like on the spiritual level of things. When we first go to him, sometimes we're reluctant to do what he tells us to do. Because in verse 42, Jacob says to his sons, like, my son will not go down there with you. Right? So like, that's kind of how 42 ends, where they're talking about all these things going on. And then Jacob's like, nope, I don't care what you're talking about. Benjamin's not going with y'all. Like, I don't care that he got Simeon, like Simeon's gone, Joseph already gone. And now you want me to trust y'all to go take Benjamin down there, which no, it's no for me. I done lost 2 sons because of this, because of y'all. And that's kind of how it ends, where Jacob is just like, not happening. Like, I know we got this grain. I know we got this money back. Like, if we go back down there, we most likely gonna be in trouble. Judah's already saying, if you don't give us Benjamin, we're not getting no more food. Like, that is the totality of the matter. Jacob don't care. Doesn't care about what could happen to the rest of his family. He's not going to give up the closest thing in his heart. And so obviously for me, seeing everything spiritual, this is how we act when Yah's just like, I want you to give me this. And we're just like, ooh, I was with you until I was with you. And we respond like Jacob a lot of times, you know, because it's attached to Benjamin is not just the thing that's precious to his heart. The thing that's precious to his heart is also attached to the reminder of his trauma and his pain of losing a son before. And so a lot of things that are close to his heart, Yah wants to get to we talked about this last week, what's the root issue of why, you know, obviously in Jacob's, you know, Jacob got a pretty strong case. He don't trust his sons, right? But I'm making it on a practical level for us and our heart posture checking when we're going in for sanctification and purification, that when it's our quote unquote Benjamins in our life, the things that resemble Benjamin in our life, in our heart, and Yah saying, bring this to me. And we're just like, see, all them other sons, all them other things in my life, I would easily send them down and give them to you. But this thing right here, can't do it. And I thought it was just interesting that, like, so we're in chapter 43 now. We're talking about the famine is still severe. Simeon's still locked up in the dungeon. I don't know how long it took for them to go through all that grain, but I'm pretty sure it took a minute. So they went through all their grain. There's no more food. And now Jacob's reminded, hey, go back and get some more food. And Judah, like, now the man told us seriously, like he was so serious. He warned us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. And you want us to go down here without him? I'm not stepping into the throne room with this official, with this man, unless we actually do what he told us to do. Like, it's that level of when Yah's calling you to come to him for deeper cleaning, he's like, come here. And you're like, okay, I'll come. But like, you got to give up this thing. I already told you what you need to give up. Like, I already told you. Now, if you come in here again and you don't want to give it up, I ain't got nothing to talk to you about. And so I was looking at it and like, literally the process of what it looks like when Yah's calling us to deeper sanctification, for deeper cleansing. And so I was like, but if you will not send him, I'm on verse 5, we will not go. Because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. And I thought it was interesting. I said about last week, where how this whole time, the word is calling Jacob by his old name because he acting like Jacob. He's not acting like Yah. He's not acting like the one who wrestled with Elohim. But in this verse 6, it says, and Israel asked, so now they're calling him Israel again because we're about to see a change in his heart posture. He's going to stop being Jacob with this whole holding everything so close to the heart, in the sense of like moving in the flesh of these emotions and putting on his leadership draws and being like, as Israel, I'm upset, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Like, this is where we're seeing this transition from being Jacob this whole time of, nah, you ain't going. He ain't going. I don't care what you're talking about. My son's not going. That's all Jacob. That's all emotion. That's all flesh. That's all being led by his emotions. Israel is more like, why did you bring this trouble upon us by telling this man you had another brother? They reply, we just answered his questions honestly. He asked us about is our father still living? And, you know, all these other things. He said, bring your brother down here. Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me and we will go at once so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. Heart change for Judah. Because now it's like, first they were just like, you know, they thought they killed Joseph. They were like, you know, they didn't care about being responsible for their younger brother's life. Now they're responsible for their younger brother's life, saying it out their mouth. Then Judah said to Israel, send the boy with me at once. I'll guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. And then their father said to them, if it must be, do this. Taryn, you already said it. Israel is showing up now. He said, you're not just going to go back and bring in Benjamin. We're going to present this man with a gift. Okay? With bombs and ointments and honey and all the things that you were saying earlier. They're like, how y'all just going to go down there and don't have nothing? Y'all ain't got nothing? Just the money to buy the grain? Israel is operating as Israel in this moment. It took some time, but he did it. And I wanted to read this because I was like, we see, you know, the heart posture change, and where he's like, go back and get us some food now. So to see the beauty of Yah's patience with us as he waits for us to return back to him, following his instructions. In this recounting of history, we see that Joseph did not put a time limit on when he expected them to come back with his youngest brother. If we open our eyes, minds, and hearts to see that Yah's request for us to bring him the things closest in our hearts, mind, and soul, he knows that, like Jacob, we hesitate, we wait, we say, no, we will not go. We say we're not going to do it. We resist Yah's will. We don't let go. We don't renounce. We say no to changing certain habits. But in the midst of us sitting in our rebellion, in our stiff neck, we are met with the reality that if we persist in our rebellion and in our fear, we will die without returning to the source of life. And Israel, or Jacob Israel, is having this realization when his grain is gone, when the source of life on the fleshly sense is gone. Now he got to reconsider, okay, am I gonna die because I won't relinquish this thing that's closest to my heart so I can live? Like, Yah waits for us. It is Yah's love and patience that he waits for us to come to this understanding. He is not an Elohim without compassion, long suffering, and gentleness. And so I want to talk about the parable of the two sons of Matthew 28, where it says, like, there were two sons. He told one son, go work in my vineyard. And he answered and said, I will not. But afterwards he repented and he went. And there was another son. He said, go down and work at my vineyard. And the son said, I will go. But he didn't actually go. And then the Messiah said, who's going to be the one that's going to basically enter into the kingdom? And it's like, obviously the first son, he said no, but later changed his mind, repented, and went and did his father's will anyway. And so I just thought it was beautiful, because a lot of times, being honest, we've all been Jacob in this situation where Yah is calling us to let go of some things, to surrender some things, to destroy some things, to cut out some covenants, to renounce and now all these different things that he's calling us to do. And we did everything up until this one or two things. And then we sit in our rebellion, and we sit in our guilt, we sit in our shame, and he's just waiting for us, you know? And I just thought it was a beautiful picture, right? A lot of times I was reading this, you know, all my life, and could never, like, let's just say this word is just living and breathing, because it's literally showing us what the process of surrender, submission, really look like. And again, I want to read Matthew 10. He says, he that loves father, mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He that does not take up his burden and follow after me is not worthy of me. He that finds his life will lose it, and he that loses his life will find it. And I thought that was the picture of what we're seeing Israel have to go through, of just like, in his heart, he felt like he was going to die if he relinquished Benjamin. But he did not know, on the other side of his obedience to the word of Joseph, that there was a life on the other end of that. Like, he was going to find not just the grain and not just getting Benjamin back, but the son that he thought he lost was going to be recuperated unto him, unbeknownst to him. But he would never have gotten that, because it's on the other side of obedience. Go ahead, sis. Go ahead, T.
This is so good. I was just gonna add, or just had a thought of when you said that if we don't relinquish those things, you know, give those things to Yah, then we will, like, you know, die in that thing, you know. And it made me think of Cain and Abel, how, like, the first fruits, like, you know, like Cain didn't want to give his choice to Yahuwah, even though it's already his, you know. Like, it's like Yah has already proven himself to be worthy and to be deserving. You know, he the one who gave it to you, so you know, you just giving him what he deserves. And you know, Cain didn't want to relinquish it because he felt like, you know, like he wasn't going to be obedient. And in his obedience, you know, like, he was cursed, you know, like he ended up going deeper and deeper into disobedience as well. After he killed Abel, after he saw the favor that Yah had on Abel. So it just kind of reminded me of just, like, you know, that the things that we don't want to give Yah, you know, and relinquish to him, you know, our children, our jobs, you know, like, just whatever it is that we're, like, you know, holding on to and we don't want to relinquish. It's like Yah has already proven himself to be worthy, you know, and deserving of the trust, you know, that we should have in him. So it should be nothing for us to just give back everything that he had given us. He's given us love. He's given us trust. He's given us, you know, consolement. He's given us, you know, compassion. He's given us mercy. So it should be nothing for us to to give that right back to Yah and say, Yah, you know, like, I love you and I trust you, and I want to give this thing, you know, to you. And I know it's as I'm listening, you know, like, it's pricking my heart, because it's things that, you know, Yah has told me repeatedly that I have to let go of. And I know it's not a hard thing not an easy thing to do. It can be easy, you know, if we can die to this flesh, but I know it's something that I'm still having to work on. So it just kind of made me think of, like, you know, we have to give Yah our choice, you know, our choice things, those things that are most closest and precious to us. You know, we have to give that back to him, because he's the one who gave it to us. And like you said, unbeknownst to him, he was about to be restored. You know, like, not only was him sending Benjamin not going to be to his downfall, but he was going to also be restored with his child that he thought he had lost, you know. So a lot of things that we hold on to, we may think that holding on to it is better than letting go, but once you let go of that thing, you give it to Yah, then he can restore us, you know, and build us back up tenfold, you know. So I just wanted to add that, because this is really good.
Hallelujah, sis. That's good. Eris, would you
I was thinking too that I mean, we're talking about Israel. He is old because he used to be very, you know, like a good leader. He used to have some order and like make a plan and everything. And so when Rachel passed away, he just broke down basically. Like he starts, you know, it's like to me, he still should have been able to, or I mean, we don't see that from the text, but like tell the kids what the plan is. This is what I need for you. So yeah, they go out one time, 13 years ago, they come back missing a brother. So he's thinking that like, hey, I'm gonna fix that this time, you know. So because I don't know what y'all story is, but something didn't go right. But now, like even some of the older ones didn't even try to stay. Well, we'll send Pastor D, but then we'll stay with Simeon. You know, they all hurry up and just had to get home. So after they tell him, oh, hey, this is what we need to do, you telling me they sit for some months or some time and continue to eat the grain before they go back? That's what, because that's still about self. They're not even thinking about the bigger picture until it's almost like nobody wants to deal with the heart or the elephant in the room, right? So now that time is going by, now it comes back up again. The resurfaces again, like what's the plan? What's the plan? And not until the one says, well, put it on me. So he offers a sacrifice himself. Like now I'm going to make sure I stand and I do what I'm supposed to do. And, you know, like a pledge to his father to go back. But at the same time, like y'all wasn't even still checking on your brother you left. Like once somebody's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, I think that that's that selfish piece on how we try to have control over stuff, like the self-preservation. You know, it ain't intentional, but you get caught up with it. And then Israel's like, nobody's there to help him. Like, Dad, like, what's the plan? What's the plan? I just would see, as mighty as he was, how could he forget all the promises of what y'all had told him to be just like weak and shut down?
Yeah, and even looking at it from Jacob's perspective, still like, yeah, you know, it's familiar, his family. Like the first time he lost Joseph, he sent him down there, all the brothers together, minus Benjamin, but they still came back a brother less. And so it's just like, you can imagine like the reoccurring, having to live again, we talk about living that reoccurring trauma of like, dang, every time y'all go out somewhere, a brother comes back missing. Like, what is going on? And so they lost Joseph, they lost Simeon, and now he's like, he has to trust them a third. He's a, like, it's like, yeah, on Jacob's heart, he's like, it's 3 times. I want us to like, it's 3 times this thing is going on. And the third time, he realized if I don't send Benjamin, like we're all going to die. And I think again, because at this point, Jacob or Israel is having his own Abraham Isaac moment. Except for, you know, Abraham, it was his only son. I mean, yeah, he had Ishmael, but y'all told him like, that's not your son. This is your son. Like, this is the only son of the promise. And here we have Jacob with like 10 sons, and he has to still do a same heart posture of like, his mind had to be like, if I send Benjamin down here, there is a scenario where I'm not seeing him again. And we see that he says it, and like he's like, for me, I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So he's already been like, I'm mourning, like I'm just going in grief, because his mind he's already convinced himself that like this is just not gonna go well, which is why I feel like for him, what Rachel said a couple weeks ago when we was doing about like Israel was doing too much, he's like, oh, I'm gonna send all these camels and send all these other things. I would love to get your input on this, of him sending all of these gifts was kind of similar to like trying to cushion this interaction that his sons are going to have with Joseph again, to say, I'm going to guarantee that no harm comes to Benjamin, so I'm going to give you all of these gifts. And so I know we could look at the gifts as multiple ways, but yeah, so I thought about Miss Rachel when she talked about how he was like going to see Esau and he did all this extravagantness. Again, we're seeing when he's finally breaking down and saying that like, I'm going to send you Benjamin, but I'm also going to send all of these other things. How it could also be looked at as like, y'all's just saying like, I want you to give this thing up and you're giving me all these other things that I didn't ask for. And so there's multiple ways to look at the gifts being offered as well as Benjamin. But on this as a heart posture check, a lot of times we be trying to give Yah stuff that he's like, I didn't ask for that. I said, I want you to give me that. You know, but yeah, he still gave Benjamin up. But like, how many times do we try to negotiate within Yah saying, oh, I'll give this up and I'll give this up and I'll give this up and I gave all these things up, but this thing over here, I'm not really gonna give that one up willingly, you know. So yeah, thoughts, comments, commentary.
I would have to say there's power in that surrenderance. And I could even testify this week with one of my Kingdom moms, where I know what it is to surrender on my own and the outcome of it. But to see someone else, it's kind of like he gives me these front row tickets to the show, and I get to watch it from a different view. And just to watch this level of surrenderance that this woman had did this past week, it really just changed everything. Because when we surrender, it's like we give him like complete like authority over our entire situation, our life, and he is able to then operate fully, and his plan is able to be completely executed as it's supposed to be. And I think sometimes when we block that, we don't realize the damage that we do to ourselves, you know, when we don't surrender certain parts of ourselves in our life. So I would have to just say that's the word that just keeps coming up to, like, surrender, you know, surrender it all. Whatever it is that you are, you know, holding back, or, you know, trusting a lack of, just literally just give it to him completely. So that's what I'm hearing from this message.
But isn't the surrendering as you first acknowledging that there's something that, like, you could keep trying all you want to, but it's not gonna go the way you really need it to go, because you gotta give it to Yah. Like, in order to repent or turn or to relinquish that control, you're gonna have to like acknowledge it. But a lot from what they're pretending it's not happening. Like, you know, here's a story, and then they just waiting on a magical. You still haven't heard one time too where it says they went and sought Yah. They didn't like posture themselves, and Israel didn't come up like that. So now he's kind of being pulled over to how his kids do business versus what he's walked a lifetime on, right? Up until before he came back home, he had a lifetime of putting his face to the ground and going into prayer and asking, you know, or confessing stuff. And all of a sudden he's not. He's just really given in to this is my situation. This is what I see.
Okay. All right, so chapter 43, verse 15. So the men took the gifts and doubled the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him, and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, "We were brought back here for the silver that was put back in our sacks in the time, for the last time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys." I'm gonna pause there. So at this point now, guys, we're just reading, and I didn't make notes on this part, but I just thought it was interesting because their fear is what they had did. Their fear of what they think is going to happen to them is what they had done. And so I just thought that was interesting how the mind and how guilt works, where you're just like, they're so fearful that he's preparing a feast for them, right? He's preparing a feast for them. He's about to feed them good. And because of their guilt and their shame and their sins, all they can see is they're walking into a trap. They're walking to their death. They're walking into bondage. And this reminds me of like something that I wrote in the book Stages of Surrender, where it talks about if we don't know Yah, when he calls us to come into the house for him to cut off certain things, we think that we're going into this place to be killed, when really he's like, "I'm asking you to come in here because I got some things I want to clean off of you and I want to elevate you." But if we don't know him, just like Joseph's brothers, they don't know Joseph, they're assuming the worst case scenario. They're assuming death. They're assuming slavery. They're assuming that all these horrible things are going to happen to them because of their sin. When Joseph's like, "I want you to come into the house so I can prepare a table for you, so I can feed you, so I can reveal who I am and restore you." But because of the sin, the sin blocks us from really knowing who Yah is. And also guilt. So I want to talk about this too, because this came up this week, and I really want to make it a point for us to understand this. As we are going through our sanctification and our purification, it is disrespectful to Yah when you hold on to your guilt when he's saying, "I forgave you." That is another way of spitting in Yah's face. Like, I have already taken on the burden and the beating and the chastisement and the death that you deserve. And so for you to continually hold yourself and blame yourself and say that you're not worthy and say that that you can't be my child, and not believe that I say that you are redeemed, and for you to not hold on to the promise of me saying that I've cast your sins in the sea of forgetfulness, you keep going into the sea of forgiveness and pulling it back up and throwing it in my face. And I already told you I forgave you. The enemy will try to use your guilt and your lack of believing in Yah's word. Like Sister Rachel said last week, Yah's like, "I have clean garments for you." But your guilt and the lie of the enemy is trying to tell you, don't take the new garments that Yah has. And you stay sitting in your dirty garments, and you stay sitting in your sins, and you keep saying, "Woe is me, I've done too much wickedness. Yah can't use me." Yah's like, "I have literally died for you. Pierced in the side, beat, blood coming out of every which way, spit, mocked, thorn of crowns, people ripped my garments, all of these things." And you're trying to tell me that I'm saying, "I love you, I forgive you, you are now my child," and you're saying, "Nah, I'm not worthy." That causes us to look at Yah like we miss his compassion. We miss his love. We miss the restoration that he's giving us. And we go into the house just like, we're going, when Yah's calling us to this house, we act like Joseph's brothers and being like, "Oh my gosh, he's gonna kill me. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be a slave. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be locked up in the dungeon." And he's just like, "I'm literally preparing a feast for you. I got a welcome home banquet for you." Go ahead, Sister Rachel.
You know what? While you were talking about that, I like I told you, I'm still meditating over this understanding about it's not about the sin, it's about the person that's sinned against, right? It's about the Most High. And I was just thinking about, the first place that there is interaction with the Most High and mankind, the Most High comes out and he says, I am that I am. And when we get to a space where we're like, oh, I'm too filthy, I'm too dirty, I'm too this, we think it's a place of humility. Some of us think that. Some of us think, oh, I'm just acknowledging how filthy and dirty I am. But actually, you're usurping the Most High, because what you're saying is that no, my dirt is so powerful. You can't clean this. What you're really saying to the Most High in a perverted, twisted way is, no, this thing that I want to hold on to is more powerful, important, has more a priority to me than you. And the issue becomes, we are saying when we do that, because we are saying when we do that, that we do not believe he is who he says he is. And now you are putting the character of the Most High on trial. And you are counting him as guilty to say, no, you're not a forgiving say, you're not a forgiving, um, a compassionate deity. No, you're not. No, you say that you do, but no, you don't. You're literally calling him a liar. And if I was the Most High and I had all the powers and all the things and everything, I would get heated too, because now you're assuaging my character. And that's what we are doing when people say, no, I'm going to, like, there's some religious, right, where a part of their penance is that they crawl across nails, or they have to climb up these stairs, and be beaten with lashes while they're climbing up the stair, to show that they're truly repentant, right? They're doing all of these outward actions and behaviors and demonstrations and that kind of a thing. But even in that kind of thing, we're taking the power away from the Most High and his ability to just say, did I say? If I say it, if the Most High has said that I can come to him with whatever it is, and he has the capacity to be able to clean it, and then I turn my little happy tail around and say, but I'm not clean, I'm calling him a liar. And that's where he has an issue. I feel like that's the place where the Most High is like, I'm not going to let you lie on me, because you're saying I'm not who I am. And when I stepped into the space to reveal myself to you all, the first thing I told y'all is I am. Not I'm probably thinking about it, not maybe. He said I am. And to be able to stand and to be able to stand in the place of that is so difficult. I mean, it is really mind-boggling to me sometimes to understand that the Most High has the ability that if he say, it ain't no thing to me, it ain't no thing to me. Now, there's a rapper I love. Oh, I absolutely love this rapper. And he has his line. He said it many, many years ago, but it's true. He said, I'm thankful that the Most High saved me from my sin, but not my consequences. And sometimes we confuse the two. There are things that the Most High has forgiven me for. When he says he washed me, when he said he forgave me, absolutely. But I still have to deal with consequences sometimes. But that has nothing to do with the forgiveness. Consequences are simply consequences. That's just what that is. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap that. It's just the universal law of that. But am I forgiven? Absolutely. Is it sitting on my record as something that can be referred back to? Absolutely not. When we, especially as we as this last point, we as believers in the Torah, when we cross paths, if we are blessed enough to cross paths through Yom Kippur, if we dare to reach back, we you mean the whole system that the Most High put in place, you're gonna reach back past the system and say, no, let's drag this forward? The audacity. And look at the pride of that. And that's something we don't really think of. And I want people to really think about that. Think about the arrogance of you saying, no, I'm gonna go get that thing. No, I'm gonna keep no. I'm gonna keep these dirty clothes because this is what I want to do. How arrogant. How arrogant of us to think we got that kind of power in the first place. Okay, so
Go ahead, Aisha.
Okay, trying to figure out how to come off of mute. I don't know why I
Look, Miss
struggle with that
Rachel,
every time.
she got us all shouting back here. I know we all shouting from the inside.
I was just going to share something in regards to that, from what Samaria said and Coach Rachel said in regards to, just being able to understand that power that Yah gives us and extends to us. But from my own experience, I've learned that the more we begin to show mercy, the more we begin to expect to have mercy and to, understand Yah's mercy. But as long as we're stiff-hearted in some ways, it's really hard to fathom the level of love that Yah has for us because of our own life experiences, right? But the more we desire to grow up in Him, we should be trying to extend that love to one another. And the more we pour it out, despite how people should misuse us and use us or abuse us and treat us or whatever it is, right? The more we give in that capacity, I think the more we understand like the capacity of how much Yah loves us. Because when I finally understood how much He loved me, it tore my whole world up, because I was like expecting all of this punishment because of what I've done throughout my life, right? All of this retribution because like of what we experience in our own lives with our own families, experiences, upbringings, or whatnot. We don't understand how good Yah is. We expect Him to be like, hey, I'm gonna take this belt because I said so, right? And you didn't listen to me, so come here so you can get your, uh-oh. You okay? Okay, you okay, sweet girl? Oh, it's okay, it's okay. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all. Go ahead, get back up. You got it. She's trying to hold the reins and do something with the other hand and slid off her little step stool. Okay, but it comes back around, y'all, to just finally recognizing, and maybe it takes an experience, right? And I had to have that experience because I was like, I'm using an example. One of my best friends passed away 2015. And when I tell you faithful, if I can drag that word faithful out, her allegiance to the Most High and His kingdom and His business. And when she got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and they gave her 6 months to live, I was like, Yah, I'm the one that's deserving of that, not her. Take my life. And I pleaded with Him. I'm more deserving. Why her? And I could not understand that thing. And then Yah said, what do you mean not her? Why not her? She is more ready than you are to come into my kingdom. You're not ready. That's why all of y'all still here. He said, as far as you go, you don't understand the kind of God that you serve. The Most High, my love for you surpasses human understanding. And I'm taking her because she's good. She's done with her work here. But you, I love you so much and I have so much compassion for you that this is how I'm forgiving you. And I want you to walk this thing out through life so that you can understand the kind of love that I have so that you can show that towards others. And it changed my life, right? Okay, baby, come on. What's up? Okay, sorry, y'all. And it just changed my life, Maya. And I just want to extend that because it just taught me a lesson. And understanding how, because if He could forgive me for what I've done, with all the heartache and things I think about, like, oh, I still wake up some nights like, I can't believe I did that when I was a teenager or with all kind of stuff. I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, if I can go back to the person that I hurt back then, you know what I mean? Where are they? How can I find them? I need to apologize. I want to repent. I want to show them that I love them and not that I meant to hurt them. You know what I mean? But just knowing alone that the Most High has forgiven us. And when He says that I see my son, and if you are my son and you have truly repented and turned from your ways, I see your sin no more. It's thrown into the sea of forgiveness, then you really understand. And we can do that to one another, despite what people have done. I know I said I was going to be short and that went long, but y'all, hopefully y'all understand what I'm saying there. But I'm going to end it with that.
That's good, sis. I think Sister Harris, she was going to say something.
Hello, everyone.
Yay.
I was listening, and I agree with everything. And just Jacob, thinking about Jacob, it reminds me of myself because Jacob and his sons, they were trying to work it out on their own. Like we try so often to figure it out. But what we really be doing, we be operating in fear. Jacob was operating in fear, and he had every right to be fearful because he had lost a son in his mind. He didn't know his son was still alive. So he was operating in fear. And when we operate in fear, we're not trusting God. We're relying on our own carnal mind. So when they were trying to work it out with all of these gifts and everything, God had already worked it out. The feast was already being prepared. Before they left their house, before they got their gifts together, the feast was already there. And a lot of times when we're operating in fear, that God has already blessed us. The blessing is already there. But somewhere in our mind, we're doubting. And God has already told us that he has not gave us the spirit of fear. So we think about everything that's happened and everything in the past, but God is always doing a new thing. And we cannot think that God thinks like us. And and it's hard for us to forgive or forget, but God is not like that. In the word somewhere it says, for he remembers that we are flesh, just a wind that passes away and come not again. So he knows our weaknesses. He understands our weaknesses. Although he want us to be the best. He want us to be obedient, but he understands that we're not him. We're not all knowing. We're not all powerful. Sometimes we will fail. Sometimes we will fall. But as long as we trust in him, then we're obedient to him and we're filled with his spirit, he will lead us and guide us and direct our path and order our steps. That's it.
Hallelujah. And that's why I really love the parable of the two sons, because that's literally what this is. This is what this narrow path, this narrow walk is literally like the parable of two sons. It's like some days, we say, no, I ain't gonna do it. And maybe a month or 2 months go by and we finally get up off our tail and we be obedient. We finally say yes to the call. We finally say yes to giving up that thing. A lot of us, Jacob was literally the son in that parable who said, no, we ain't going down there. You ain't taking Benjamin. As some time went on, he changed his mind. He repented of what he said, and he went and he decided to be obedient. Because Yah he's in the midst of the middle too. We talked about last week. I'm before you, I'm behind you, I'm in the midst of you. He's in the beginning, the middle, and the end of all of our decisions. So when he's saying give up this hard thing, and our first response is like, nah, I ain't giving that up. Maybe a year go by. Maybe for you it's a week. Maybe for somebody else it's 6 months. Maybe it's 3 months for you. But in the middle of that time, Yah's presence is literally still there, hovering, waiting, pressing upon your heart, doing the molding and the working that you can't see that's happening. And then when you finally meet him at the place, you're like, okay, Yah, Father, okay. I see, I understand. I realize now. I mean, I was aware that I need to get that thing up, but I didn't really understand or realize the gravity of why I need to give this over to you. Because I was operating in fear. I was operating in doubt, or I was operating in pride, or I didn't really realize how this offended you. But now I see, so I'm repenting and I'm going to do it. And like, is that not what walking this narrow path is like? He's literally the Elohim who's in the midst of all the decisions as we are working your salvation with fear and trembling. That's literally that middle ground of just like, I'm working it. I pause. I stayed here maybe a little too long. Maybe I stayed in this place a little too long, but I'm going to get back up and keep going. That's the whole, you got to endure through it. And so I really love this story because I'm grateful to Yahuwah that he is pulling out the deeper levels of this story, because it's not just about Joseph and his brothers and Jacob. It's literally showing us the process of what our heart posture and that change, even in the fear, like the fear of going into the house of our Savior, and he has to fix our perception of him. Jacob is fixing his perception. His brother's perception is that he means them harm. He means them evil. And like, because you're getting to know me. You didn't know me this whole time, and now I'm showing you my heart. I'm showing you, like, you're like, yeah, you know, Joseph still got some tricks up his sleeve. He's still doing some testing. So again, they're still being tested, but in the midst of the testing is where the brothers are getting to see that, like, oh, this man don't really intend us no harm. He just want to make sure that we're actually honest, that we're actually who we say we are. You know, like, I just keep going back to that. Like, I say that our Elohim, he loves like the 5 love languages, but he's like, but he was telling me, he was like, words of affirmation and gifts don't mean nothing to me if you don't have no quality time, and if your acts of service, if you're not actually, you know, spending time with me and doing the things that I asked you to, your words of affirmation and praise and giving me all these gifts, that don't mean nothing to me. That's vanity. I want your devotion. I want your actions to match what you say. You can say all day long. I say with vanity, do they come nigh unto me? Yeah, he wants all of them, right? Like, but if you're just giving gifts and words of affirmation, those hold little weight. Your words of affirmation and your gift giving are beautiful when they are because of your devotion. Sometimes, you know, people, a lot of us, we get it flipped, like, oh, someone gave me all these gifts, that's how they love me. But y'all's like, your gifts, your words of praise, if it's not with the quality time, if it's not because of the quality time, right? All those other things are a byproduct of your quality time and your devotion to the Father. You know, yeah. What you say, Desiree? He said, oh yeah, the shearing shed. Yeah, the shearing house. Literally. That's, you know, I say the shearing house is like it's the routine maintenance, you know, for sheep, you know, every year around Passover time, every year around spring, the sheep have to go into the shearing house to get that excess fur cut off so they can, you know, so they won't overheat, so they won't die, you know, so they can be inspected, so they can be ready for the feast or whatever. But it's an every year thing, which is so beautiful. Miss Rachel, she mentioned like Day of Atonement. Literally, Yah's prescription of the feast days is a prescription of us constantly going before him to be cleansed, to be purged, to be inspected. And so it's crazy, like the sheep going to the shearing house and then go back outside and put on all the wool again. It's just like, that's crazy. But yeah, where did I stop? Oh yeah, so they're begging him in verse 20. Anybody have anything else they wanted to say before I keep reading? Okay, verse 20 of chapter 43. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. We beg your pardon, our Lord, they said. We came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks and found silver, the exact weight in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put the silver back in our sacks. It is all right, he said. Don't be afraid. Your Elohim, the Elohim of your father, has given treasure in your sacks. I receive your silver. Then he brought Simeon out to them. The steward took them into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard that they were to eat here. I'm going to go ahead and finish reading this part. When Joseph came home, they presented the gifts to him they had brought into the house, and they bowed down to the ground before him. He asked them how they were and how their aged father you told me about. Is he still living? They replied, your servant, our father, is still alive and well. And they bowed down, prostrating themselves before him. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "Elohim be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and controlled himself and said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for this is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. So we're seeing, the manifestation of Joseph's dream has happened 2 times to him, right? Already. They're prostrating themselves. But I want to really focus on the fact that he gave them water to wash their feet. As this symbolism of just like, you're not going to just come and sit at this table all dirty and dusty. Like, yes, I have grace for you. Yes, I got a table for you, but it still requires you having to get this dust from outside off of you to come sit down at this table. Again, equating to this picture that we're seeing of our restoration, of our purification, of our being in the house, of us sitting down at the Father's table. He invites you in. It's kind of like that. He's like, go and sin no more. He's like, I'm telling you, you good, but don't go back out and do the same thing that got you dirty. Come in here, let me wash your feet. I'm receiving all the gifts that you're giving me. And again, back to this weeping, like Joseph it says that he's controlled. Ms. Rachel brought that up, that like he controlled himself, all these emotions are going on. You can imagine Joseph's like, I knew I wasn't crazy. I had this dream. They're literally bowing down before me. Like they brought I'm feeling this, I'm getting this reunion with my brothers who don't even know it's me. I'm seeing my mother's son. My mother's no longer here. This is the closest thing to my mom that I've seen in a very long time. It's so many emotions, right? We're seeing his forgiveness being on display. We're seeing his sorrow. We're seeing that in the midst of the weeping, there is the healing. And so I just thought this was just like a beautiful picture of, one, for us to examine our lives, to say, are we operating like this when we're presented with people who've wronged us and now they're coming into our home now, or they're back into our lives, and are we controlled in the midst of all of the emotions, or are we just like a man that was like a city without walls, a man that doesn't have control? Joseph is so wise, he's so mature, and he's so elevated, but he's not ignoring the work that's being done in his heart, even for himself. But even as his brothers are going through a work process, Joseph himself is going through this work process. And this is just a beautiful story of forgiveness. So, thoughts, comments, commentary? All right, well, that was our lesson for tonight, y'all. We'll go further into 44. We'll go into 44 next week. But even just like the portions, like it would have been crazy. But like, hey, I'm the oldest. Why he got more than me? Like, but that didn't happen. Hallelujah, that didn't happen. But again, I don't know how long it took them to realize that this was Joseph, but like clearly they still have no idea, right? They're still unaware of this thing. To the point, even where they're just like, the brother who's without any blame of the situation is the one that's getting all the portions, like 5 times more than everybody else. He the baby, he can't even eat all that food. Like, but yeah, I really love everything that came out tonight, and how we're making sure that we're looking on the inside of us, on how our heart posture needs to be in the myriad of situations, emotions, and all the other things. Go ahead, Sister Rachel.
I was thinking about when you asked the question if there was any other thing that we were thinking about. I was thinking about how, we're showing that this story of Joseph is, akin to glimpses of Yeshua. And I was thinking about um when they came to the servant and they were saying, "Oh, no, no, we did this thing," and he was like, "Peace be unto you. Don't worry." And he says, "Your Elohim, the Elohim of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks." I was thinking about, and then the next verse it talks about him being washed. I was thinking about the wedding feast of the Lamb. I was thinking about how in the culture of attending a wedding, that the person who is hosting the wedding, not like our stuff, we're not talking about this 21st century stuff that be going on, but we're talking about, first century stuff, that says that the host is the person that provides garments. They provide your garments, they provide the place where you're going to be staying while the ceremony is going on. Like, they give you all these things. And the interaction that you see over in the renewed covenant, when it talks about the man not having the garments on and being thrown out into gnashing of teeth, was because he didn't accept what had been given to him. And going back to earlier, us talking about this concept of the work of purification and the work of sanctification is not even something that we do. All we're required to do is to present ourselves. We're not responsible for the cleaning. We're not responsible for the purifying, because who makes that determination is definitely not us. I can't say, "Oh, well, I fasted for 40 days and for 40 nights. And so therefore, because I met this particular requirement that I have seen that I am now clean." Not necessarily so. You are clean because the Most High says, because of what the Most High says about it. Not because of the act itself, not because of the discipline itself. It is because what the Most High says. And so when I was seeing them being washed and them kind of being in bewilderment, I was like, yeah, because there's nothing that they could have done to put themselves in that place. There is nothing that they could have done to earn to be inside of the governor's house while everybody else is having famine, and they're being not only washed and provided for, their animals being provided for, but now they got all this food and they got drink and it's a famine. Did we forget it's a famine in the land when all of this is going on? I'm like, it just reminds me. It reminds me that the redemptive work that happens with us and with the Most High is really falling on he's taking on the majority of that covenant and what it meant to satisfy that covenant. And as we're heading into Passover season, I I am I am thinking about, oh yeah, he had to be the sacrifice because my sacrifice was never going to be good enough. My works was never going to be good enough, but I am responsible for presenting myself and saying that I accept the work that he has done, and that's going to be the key. That's where we're falling short, especially when we start talking about like our organized religions and stuff. I'm not one of those people that berates people who are in Christianity. I don't do that because I traveled that path myself. I never would have got to the Most High had I not gone through that particular journey to be able to come around full circle to Him. So I'm not one of these people that bashes Christians. I don't. I understand that the system itself has some issues and things. But I say that to say this, that is where the message of Christianity has gotten off. Is because we still make it about us and what we do and what we have and how we lose that space of knowing that no, it's the redemptive work that we could not do, that we will never be able to do, and that we have to be able to wholeheartedly accept. You know what? No, there's not a sacrifice I could give. There's not an offering I could give. There's not a title I could be given in the church. There's not enough white I can wear on the third Wednesday. There's not none of that is a substitute to the redemptive work and what it cost him so that I could be seated at the table. That's what I was thinking about.
I think at the heart of all of it is like your willingness to go. He's like, it's like he calls, he knocks, but like our willingness to say yes, like the brother still had to be willing to make the trip down to Egypt. They still had to be willing to go into the house. They had to be willing to sit there and let their feet be washed. They had to be willing to sit at the table. It's like even like in your willingness, they were willing, but it still didn't erase their fear in the midst of it. But y'all's like, are you willing? Is your willingness to serve me greater than your fear of not knowing what's on the other side to sit at my table? You know, and I feel like that's where the working of the salvation happens, where it's just like each level, each step as we sit down with the Father, it's like your willingness, your desire. I saw a quote today. It says, true deliverance is not a change of behavior, it's a change of desire. And it made me think of Sister Rachel right off the bat when she talked about like, y'all's not really trying to like, he's not really going to bombard you with like your action in the midst of your sin. It's like, where is that desire coming from? Yah is working to change our desires. In the changing of your desires, your behavior will change. You know, I tell people all the time, growth is a byproduct of healing. That was literally like so you asked about you asked about the picture that I use right here. So on the bottle, like the slogan was, growth is a byproduct of healing. A lot of times people just I want my hair to grow, but like your scalp is damaged. So we need to heal the issue. And so a lot of times, y'all's just like the changing of the habits, the letting go of certain things, all that's going to happen when your heart, when your desire for me increases and increases and increases, and you'll see your behavior change, and you'll see your love towards others change, and you'll see your compassion increase. Like all those things happen when our desire for him is just, can't nothing feed it but him. And that's where the devotion comes in, and the love, because your desire is for him, and not just to say, oh yeah, I do this, and I keep the Sabbath and I do the feast days, but like your desire still isn't really for him. So now you're just in religion like everybody else. When your heart is like, I just want to love my Father. When you want to love your Father, then you automatically begin to do his ways. You automatically stop participating in certain things. You automatically give up foods that he say, these are not good for your body, because I know. You automatically do those things because your desire is for him. And he's the only one that can change our desires. And that's why it's deliverance. But again, you're not going to desire something if you're not willing to get that desire. Like, it's the willingness. He's always gone after, like, are you willing to serve me? That was the issue with our ancestors. He said, what I'm telling you to do, it's not hard. It's in your mouth. You can do it. But the problem is you don't want to do it. And therefore you make every excuse in the book to not serve me because you really don't have a desire for me. So at the end of the day, it's about our desire. And he got all the deliverance from all the false desires to make our desire him and him alone. Taryn, was you finna say something?
I was just going to say, it's that part of being honest with yourself. Like, okay, if you have those ungodly desires for whatever it is, I mean, the more you spend time with him, I mean, I've said this, like, me and my husband have talked about it within the family, but everybody think it's always like cheating and stealing and lying on people, whatever, but overeating, right? Or just disobedience. But confessing that, saying, hey, I surrender this thing to you, help me to, then that's the first to peel off. If you're truly surrendering it, if you're truly, trying to bring it to say, I understand. And it's that, for me, it's the public acknowledgement. I know that this is not of you, and that I need to have more self-control or the bad stuff that come with it. And, I kind of make more lists of, in the sense of, if I think people wrong me or something like that, what's my accountability in it? Like, I knew I was supposed to cut them loose. a long time ago. So I overstayed or I let them have too much access. And then now I'm mad at their behavior, or how somebody mistreated me, or, I made a joke. My husband, he don't understand it, but my ex-husband, I'm like, I don't have no ill feelings for him because I know I ain't had no business being there. I tried to make it fit. But what's crazy is that for me, that traditional church, like Miss Rachel was talking about, or that stuff or whatever, like, I don't want to say it was like a big deliverance thing, but everybody made me think, my circle made me think, you gonna pray that man, right? Whatever. But that wasn't where I was supposed to be, and they take one of them big mamas to say that God gives him to you. When that light come on, I'm like, but how can I be angry and upset with him for how he treated me or how I felt, when I ain't had no business being there? Right? Like I knew that that wasn't I could say I love them or whatever the case is, but I'm still trying to make a mess and trying to get God to honor my mess, so to speak, type of thing. So, but it's that true submission piece.
Something that came out this week, I was talking to a sister of mine, and I was trying to illustrate like the importance of when Yahushua's like, enter the kingdom like a child. And then the whole concept of being born again. A lot of times we think being born again, you're born again and you're born again as a grown person, but that's not what Yahushua's really trying to illustrate. When we're born again, it is that, hold on, I need to just read it because I just knew it was y'all because I was like, I can't even remember what I said. I gotta go to the message. She had asked me a question like, are we ever like done doing the work? Because she was trying to understand the concept of being a new creature. And I guess combating it with the idea in Christianity, we're like, oh, I'm a new creature, I'm good, versus what it actually means in the Hebraic context of being a new creature. And so I said, what did I say to her? I said, we are continually purging. The new creature is that you are now that your heart is newly inclined to submission and surrender. So the new part is that your heart, a new heart, the fleshly heart, where he can write his laws and his statutes on your heart and you'll do them. It's the fact that your heart is in a space to where you can actually surrender and that you will be obedient and that you are devoted to living a life in fullness to Yah. Like that's the new part. And so when a baby is born new, it's a blank slate. The parent, the father, can now tell this child, this is what you should do, and the child does it. This is how I'm going to train you in the word, and you do it. So the concept of being made new, being born again, is that I'm a whole infant, and the only thing I have to guide my life is the pure word of the Father. And if my Father says I should eat like this, I should celebrate him like this, I should love my neighbor like this, I should love myself the way he loved, like all these things that he put in his guidelines of his wisdom, of his Torah, of his instructions for our life. The new part is that when I read it, I don't immediately reject it. Because if I'm a child, if I have if you have children, you have toddlers, you have babies, and you're teaching them these new things that they've never seen before. They never experienced this life before. This is a whole new world to them. Being born again is that we're saying yes to the I'm an infant now, Father, and whatever your words say, this is my study guide. Because before we were new, we had our own thoughts, we had our own understanding, we had our own situation of what this is right. But God's word says, I think this is right, but God's word says this isn't right. And now, because I'm grown, I can't surrender to the authority of his word because I got my own authority in me. But if you're a child, you're under the authority of your parents, under the authority of your father. And so even that, when I was explaining to her, I'm like, you are new because your heart is saying, I'm going to be willing and I'm going to say yes to what he says. When before, it was just like, I kind of trust him over here, but I don't because I'm really a teenager. I'm born again, but I'm acting like a teenager because Yah's word say this, but I'm still going to do it my own way. So you truly haven't received the new heart of the new covenant, which is a heart of flesh. It's a blank slate. I'm going to write my words, my laws, my statutes, and you're going to do them and you're going to walk in them. That's what he said the new covenant was. And so being a blank slate, being that baby, that newborn, this drinking from the milk of the word, all you got is the milk. All you got is the basic things of his word until you're ready to chew on meat. That's why Paul used that analogy. Because if you're truly born again, you only gonna be drinking the milk. And a lot of times we forget the milk is the quote unquote what people call the Old Testament. That's all that they had to study from. This is the milk. This is the foundational, the first principle, the oracles, the things that came directly out of the Father's mouth. Do we trust what he said out of his mouth or do we not? And if we don't, we need to get to the root of that thing and understand, why is my authority not him, and why is it somebody else, or why is it something else in my life? And so I wanted to share that because I know sometimes people struggle with like, oh, I'm made new, I'm done. Like, that's it. It's like, no, being made new is saying, you're saying yes to the process of being taught. You're saying yes to the process of being led by him. You're saying yes to obedience and willingness. And to not think, like Sister Rachel said last time, sometimes we think it's linear, like, oh, I'm made new, I'm done. And then it like makes us lazy in the process of not thinking that we have work to do. You know, we're not even crawling yet. Some of us, you know, we still being carried around. And that's a beautiful place to be. I would love to be a baby some days. I ain't got to change myself. I ain't got to give myself my own bath. Like my parents going to do all of it for me. That's the beauty of being born again. Y'all's like, if you just trust me, I'll carry you. And when you start getting some good muscles in you, your bones solidify a little bit better, then you're gonna start crawling on your knees, you'll start taking some steps, and then I can start trusting you with some other things. But you gotta start with the milk before I can trust you with these meaty things. Sometimes we be like, oh, I'm born again, and then all these new baby believers want to start teaching and preaching, and they making everybody choke up on stuff because they don't even have an understanding of just the milk part yet, or they despise the small beginnings, or they despise the milk. And I was like, this is where the beauty is. Like, you know, that fresh newborn baby smell that we love. Like, this is the beauty. Don't despise that, you know? But that's my little tangent.
That makes me to add on to that, like you were saying, like the newborn baby, like that milk, you know, like that mother's milk is like the most nutritious thing, you know, that the babies can take in, you know, and that is how they mature. And it makes me think about the word perfect in Hebrew. You know, it means to be fully mature, to be full grown. So in order for us to be perfected by Yah, then he has to give us we have to take in the proper nutrients, you know, to be able to do that. But it takes time. Just like you don't expect a child, you know, to come out of the womb and start walking. That's just, if that happened, you know, I don't know. Anything is possible, I guess. But, you know, like you don't expect a child to just come out and start walking. That's out of order, you know, that's out of the ordinary. And so it's the same way when you think about, like, you know, taking in the proper nutrients. You have to be able to, you know, you have to take in that milk so that the legs can strengthen, you know, so that you can build up those muscles, you know, that's needed for you to be able to begin to walk, you know, like those motor skills and other things like that. So it just kind of makes me think of that word, you know, the word perfect in Hebrew. It means to be full grown, you know, to be fully in accord with truth, like Yahusha was, you know. And if we are to walk after Yahusha, then we have to be perfected, and we have to be, you know, we have to take in like the milk, and then the next stage, you know, once we get to that next stage, it's like when babies get to the next stage of 8 months, or I forget, I'm about to have a 14-year-old in 2 weeks. So I forget what the stages are, like what the ages are that you're supposed to start on, like the finger foods and things like that. But you know, like it's a process. It's stages.
But you know, that analogy is you can see that because even with my kids, I'll sit there and say, if you just said your stomach hurt, why did you eat that? You know, like but you're sitting here as you're shepherding them and trying to teach them. Or I mean, when we were younger, my grandma, everything was healed by water. Like, you know, my head hurt. Did you drink some water today? You know, my stomach hurt. Did you drink some water today? Well, I can't go to the bathroom. Did you drink some water today? You know, and with all the trash that's out here, the same thing. But I mean, from my 30-year-old kid down to my twin 18-year-olds or whatever, I was like, don't tell me nothing about your ass. Like, you over here talking about you need mucinex. Stop drinking milk. You hold, like, all you doing is making more mucus by, you know, go eat an orange, like get a kiwi or something. But it's funny because even those moments, we see it how, if you spend more time with me, then maybe you won't have so much fear. If you spend more time, or learn to, for me, is to protect my space. If you be around a whole bunch of stuff, you letting all this stuff pour into you, and then you don't know why you having fickle dreams, or maybe you get angry because you've been around a whole bunch of people who've been angry, and those type of things. But it's the same with our kids when we're trying to, watch them. And I do giggle at that because my one baby, when she was a year old, she potty trained herself, the whole thing, but everything was, I got it, I got it. She couldn't even talk, but I got it. She was like, I'll do it myself, kid. Like, right? I'll do it myself. I don't need no help. And, like that. Where you see that independence from? It's okay to have love, and it's okay to have help, and it's okay to, have the village and stuff. But you do see that mirrored as a parent.
It's such a beautiful analogy, and I just like, I'm gonna keep talking about it until I finish it. But so in the intro of Stages of Surrender, the book I'm writing, I talk about the milk thing. But the way that y'all first showed it to me was like in the analogy of butterflies versus moths versus set apart butterflies, and how there's only few species. The only species that I studied was the monarch butterfly, where like the only thing that they eat is milkweed when they're caterpillars. That's it, just milkweed, because it's the only nutrients that's gonna like fortify them to be strong enough so they can turn themselves into a chrysalis. While other caterpillars, they will eat all kinds of stuff. They will eat through your clothes. They will eat rice. They will eat rotten things, all kinds of stuff. And they'll still get strong enough to build a cocoon or a chrysalis. But the difference is, it's just like, what type of transformation are you seeking? If you're seeking a transformation that's fully in the word, I said the word like the milk. If you're seeking a full transformation in Yah's word, you only gonna eat that milk like the monarch butterfly caterpillar. Just milkweed. That's my only diet. All I eat is the milk. And the thing about milkweed, what I thought was beautiful was, when the caterpillar only eats milkweed, it's good for them, but if a predator tries to eat them, it's poisonous to the predator. It's like, hey, fill up on nothing but this word. So when someone tries to come at you with something other than the word, they'll spit you out, because all you got is word in you. They can't come against the word. And even like, it's just a beautiful analogy, right? But then we have other caterpillars who are not really butterflies. They turn into moths. They can eat all kinds of stuff, all kinds of garbage. And these caterpillars who eat trash will turn into butterflies who will then also, you ever seen a butterfly on a rotten corpse drinking the liquid from the dead body? See, monarch butterflies, they don't do that. They like, I done ate milkweed all my life. I have a pristine diet. I only eat this one thing. And when I transform into a butterfly, I'm only going to eat nectar from flowers. Like, I'm not about to be sitting around here hovering around dead bodies and rotten mildew and drinking all the liquid that's nasty. But you look like a beautiful butterfly to the people looking in, but they don't know your diet. But the difference is the monarch butterfly, set apart diet, set apart lifestyle, only eating this one type of thing. And then it transforms to a beautiful butterfly who only eats the set apart things. But we got other butterflies that are beautiful to look at with the eye, but they hover around dead bodies. Like, it's like and what y'all was telling me, he was like, I need my children to be like the caterpillars who only eat the milkweed. Because there's a lot of people around who look just like you, but they're eating milkweed and they're eating rotten flesh. They're drinking up the word of Yah, and they playing around with tarot cards. They're drinking the word of Yah, and they looking at astrology and the stars and trying to mix it all together. So when they transform, yes, they too went through a transformation and they're flying like a butterfly, but they are not full up on the word. And that is that's another analogy of the wheat versus the tares, because we got all these people out here talking about how you can elevate and how you can transform and how you can get closer to God. But what is your foundation? What have you been eating? And a lot of times you cannot tell. There's actually a species of moths that mimic the monarch butterfly, but it's not the monarch butterfly. But if you ain't got no training in your discernment of what a butterfly, what a monarch butterfly does and doesn't eat, or will and will not participate in, you will think that this moth is a monarch butterfly. And another caveat, the monarch butterfly is called king of the butterflies in the butterfly species. So again, we are taking after our king. We cannot be participating like these other caterpillars. Yes, everybody got an inch on the ground and everybody got to start at the bottom and eat. But what are you choosing to eat in your infancy? And a lot of times we try to rush the process because we want to be big grown and we want to be on a tree like a caterpillar and a chrysalis already. But y'all's like, you're not focusing on just the milk. So when you're in your chrysalis thinking you're transforming, it's going to be an incomplete transformation because it's not with me at the center. And it's just like, it's so imperative in these last days because there's so many people who want to talk about this word and become teachers, but they're not even monarch butterflies. You think they are because they flying around, they look like a butterfly, but that's a whole moth. And you don't even realize it. And you're learning from a moth instead of the king of the butterflies. And I'm just like, it's so serious because like when I started looking at these pictures of these moths and their butterflies, I'm just like, that's a moth? That thing is gorgeous. But that thing is attracted to any kind of light. That thing will get caught up by any little flicker of light. Y'all know how moths be. They will bump into all kinds of stuff looking for a light. Butterflies, they sleep at night. They awake during the daytime with the real true light, the sunlight. Moths are attracted to anything that look like it's light. And that's the problem. It looked like holiness, so you done flocked over there to it. But that's not holiness. It's imitating a light that's not light. Again, when I say the butterfly analogy had me like, ooh, like, yeah. He's like, I need my people to see that the deception is so deep and it's so real, but it's not undetectable if you just eat my word only. Just my word. No commentaries, no religion, no seminary school, none of that. Just my word. Just what I said. Like, so he said what he said. Did I not say what I said? Someone told you I didn't say that, but what my word say I said? That's it. Because if you don't trust his word and what he said, you will be deceived by a moth. So anyways, I'm going to call it a night. We're going to close out in prayer.
You know, you always do that. You break us off with the heavy, then you be like, okay, y'all. Because that's a whole, and all I can do is think about, that's what that thing be about at my front door. You know, like it makes perfect, Texas has something, have you seen it, the butterfly migration that happens? Like for a whole month, they're everywhere. I mean, all over your cars, all over, I'm trying to say, I don't know if I've seen that up north, but like all the places I've lived, never seen it like that here. But now I'm going to be so in tune to seeing that thing that looks like it's camouflaged by my lamp outside my front porch at night. That's not the monarch butterfly. So that is so good. Thank you for that.
All right, y'all. So prayer requests, praise reports. I mean, we already did praise reports, but if you have any more praise reports, that's cool. We can hear those too. But yeah, prayer requests before we pray.
Well, I got one more praise report. So I had my follow-up to my lab. So had some biopsies and stuff done a couple weeks ago, but today the doctor called and said no cancer. So I feel like I knew that, but it was still nice to hear all of that. So with all the tests and everything, got that off my plate. And after the week I had, I was like, yeah, I can't be, fighting on all fronts, but that was good. So definitely those two praise reports.
Your praise report. You said with your husband.
Yes. So they were gonna keep him because they wanted to do like a cardiac stress test. He has a defibrillator in his chest, but basically after they kind of pulled the fluid off and stuff, they were like, he can follow up with his regular doctor. They didn't need to keep him like in more critical. He worked out today. He was in the garage playing his doing the most stuff. But yeah, so he's feeling much better and then they did give him something for sleep because he hadn't really been sleeping, so he's been much better. And blood pressure's good, like because you know we check it multiple times a day or whatever. So yeah,
Praise report. He's back home. He's feeling
yeah,
better, and we're just praising y'all that for the increasing of that good report.
absolutely, absolutely.
Would anybody like to close out in prayer?